Hey guys, what's up? It's Merc here from Poolshed Games, and again we are talking about Starfinder. This is going to be the beginning of my intro series, kind of delving into the Starfinder Core Rulebook. I plan on looking through just each chapter of the book and kind of giving you my thoughts and a little rundown on it. So today I'm going to be talking about the overview and character creation. Overview, which is basically your hey, welcome to the game section, which there's that beautiful artwork again. The overview is in every role-playing game book that you're going to buy. And basically what the overview is for new players who have never played a role-playing game before and decided to play this game, or for veterans that just kind of want an idea of what they're getting into, to be able to get that. Now, the Starfinder overview is 6 pages long, so it's not significantly long by any means, but it covers what's a role-playing game. Which, for those of us that have been playing for a while, this seems silly, but you have to remember we all started somewhere, and being just kind of told a little bit like this is a role-playing game can be kind of helpful. It also discusses what's in the book. So this is kind of the section like when you go to your local gaming store or your bookstore. You can pick up one of the books and you can kind of flip through it if it's not in cellophane. You look at this section, and it kind of can give you an idea of, well, do I want to play this or not? So that's what that is. It explains some basic concepts, like what's a non-player character, what's a player character, what's it mean to roll a d6, a d20, you know, and those are all covered like that. And there's some cool artwork. So one thing the book has, it has a lot of nice artwork. And the final thing in the overview is an example of play, which these always kind of amuse me. Because an example of play is set up in there for people to get a feel for what it is to sit around a table and play with a group of friends. And it's always this ideal scenario where the Dungeon Master, or the Star Master as I'm going to use for this, is just completely prepared and knows exactly what to do. And the player characters have created characters that are, you know, well adjusted, well prepared for the adventure. And it's usually a group of 4 or 5 people where every base is covered. Now, it's a great example of play, but it's not the best example of a real game. An example of a real game would be you have two fighters, a thief, and, you know, a pilot in Starfinder, and nobody has healing, nobody has like computer hacking abilities, and you're trying to figure out what to do in that scenario. But anyway, the example of play, they're always fun to read because they can kind of give you little ideas for adventures. But I never take them super seriously because, in my experience, they're what an ideal game would be. They're not what your games are probably going to be like. So there's that. So after those 6 pages, you get into what I consider, you know, and I think a lot of people do, one of the most important aspects of a role-playing game, which is character creation. And clearly, the character is what represents you in the gaming world. Character creation in Starfinder is a lot like character creation in D&D or Pathfinder. You know, you're going to start with an idea, you work your way from idea, and then you pick like your race, your class. In Starfinder there's themes, so you pick a theme, and then you get your ability scores, and you kind of fill things out with skills and feats, and then you have a character. The character creation steps chapter goes over how to do pretty much all of that. It starts off with suggesting that you should come up with an overall idea or archetype in mind, I guess, for your character. So say you want to play like a rough and tumble space mercenary. There's your concept. You can go through now and pick a race and a class and a theme that all kind of fit that. That's pretty straightforward. It doesn't really have any effect on gameplay. It just kind of helps you formulate your plan for what your character is going to be. Next is step 2, which is choose a race. There are a bunch of races in the game at the moment. There are the android, the human, the I'm gonna butcher some of these names because they're just they're just weird. There's the Kasatha, the Lashunta, the Shireen, the Vesk, and the Yosoki. Which you can see the list here. This is a nice list because it gives you the races and a basic one sentence description of what they are. Gives you the themes, which does the same thing, and it gives you the classes, which again you get a one sentence description of. This is what this is. Each of the races, of course, has their own benefits, is in stats and hit points. And when I go on to the races chapter, I will cover that. Now, on top of those races that I mentioned, there are rules that you can play elves, dwarves, gnomes, halflings, half-orcs, and half-elves. Because, again, there's the legacy section in the back of the book where you can bring things from Pathfinder into Starfinder. So you pick your race, and that gives you your hit points, part of your starting hit points, and it gives you your abilities. So, like human, for example, you get a +2 to any one stat that you want to put it in. So now you have your class, you write that on your character sheet, which is something else that it does here. As it breaks down the steps, it includes little sidebars. It's like, okay, well, now that you figured this out, write it in the corresponding spot on your character sheet. So this is very, I think, new player friendly in that it kind of tells you where things go and what steps to take. After you've picked a race, it tells you to pick a theme. Themes in here are pretty sci-fi. You know, you have bounty hunter, mercenary, icon, ace pilot, outlaw, xeno seeker, space explorer, and scholar. So you have a good number of different themes, and what the themes do is they give you a +1 to one of the stats your character has. So strength, dex, con, wisdom, intelligence, or charisma. And on top of that, they give you an extra skill at first level. Or if it's already a class skill, they allow you to add a bonus to it. And they also give you a bonus to certain checks. And at every, I believe, 5 levels, so level 1, level 5, level 10, 15, and 20, you get more perks. So that's kind of neat. And they kind of help to guide where your character's going. You can go themeless, but it's not something that I would recommend. It's something the book really doesn't recommend because you don't get an extra bump to any of your stats. And the bonuses are kind of meh. Like, they're not really anything to be excited about. So once you have your theme picked, you put that on your character sheet and you move on to your class. Now, the class section of the book is one I'm going to be spending a good deal of time on. I might do a separate video for each of the classes. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. If not, maybe I'll just do like 2 or 3 classes at a time. Maybe I'll break it down into like combat characters, non-combat characters, and casters. I don't know. I'm going to play around with that. You guys, let me know what you think down in the comments. But your class is what your character does. And, you know, in here, you have the envoy, which is kind of like your ambassador. You have the soldier, you have the operative, you have the mechanic, you have the mystic, the technomancer, you have the Solarian, and I believe that is all of them. Yes, I have them memorized. Fantastic. So those are the races that are kind of available. And each one fills a different role. Like your envoy is kind of like your face character, the character that deals with other player or other groups and makes deals. They could be an ambassador or that kind of thing. You know, your operative is your stealthy, behind the scenes kind of guy, assassin or hacker or like thief. Your soldier is exactly what it says on the tin. It is your soldier. He is the fighter equivalent in this game. The mystic is more of a caster that's more kind of in tune with like cleric, divine casters from say, Pathfinder or D&D. Whereas Technomancer is kind of more like the Sorcerer or Wizard, where their spells are a little bit more predetermined, I guess. So you have those two options. And then you have the Mechanic, who is probably one of my favorite classes because it really just, it feels good. They get a drone, they have all these cool abilities. And then you have the Solarian, which I read through the Solarian the other night because one of my players in the group is planning on playing that character. And initially, I was like, this is kind of dumb. It's essentially the game's version of handling like a Jedi. But reading through it, it is kind of a cool class. So I'm not terribly down on it. And those are kind of like the classes in a nutshell. And once you pick your class, you put it on your character sheet, and your class gives you a lot of information. It basically tells you how many more hit points you get at first level, tells you what your stamina is going to be, it tells you how many skill points you have, what feats you get, it gives you class features and abilities. So that's a whole bunch of stuff. And that's step 4 in the character creation process. So you have that. And then you move on to you finalizing your ability scores, which, as you've been going, your race has given you bonuses to ability scores, your class doesn't, but your theme does. So you kind of make notes of these, and then, again, this is all the steps just right in the first part of the chapter. You generate your ability scores. And Pathfinder uses kind of a different approach Starfinder uses a different approach than Pathfinder did. Whereas in in Pathfinder, you rolled. Kind of like in D&D, you roll 4 dice, pick the 3 highest, that's your ability, and you do that 6 times. You can put them wherever you want. Starfinder, that option's there, and you can do that if you want, but there's 2 other options. And the one that they recommend you do, I'll get into in a minute because that's actually another section of this chapter that I want to go over. So you do that, you decide what your abilities are, and you jot them down. Now each class will have a key ability kind of recommendation, and that's where you want to put your highest statistic numbers because it's what the most important stat is for the class that you've picked. So after you do that, it says to assign skill ranks and feats. And normally you only get like 1 or 2 feats at first level depending on what race or class you have. Extra. You'll get stuff with your class, but you get extras depending on your level and your race. Skills come with your class. You get a certain amount of skill points to spend on class skills. Or cross-class skills. Class skills in this are handled much like in Pathfinder, where you can take any skills you want, but if you take a class skill, you get an extra bonus. I believe it's +3. I have to look. I'm not entirely sure yet. But you get the bonus to your class skills. It's not like in D&D where a cross-class skill is a half a rank, which is always kind of weird to me. And they make knowing how many ranks you can have in a skill very simple because it's your level is the max number of ranks you can have in a skill. And then finally, it's just fill in the finishing details. It's a 9-step process they tell you to go through for creating your character. And the finishing details are just like, where'd they come from, what's their alignment, that kind of thing, name, background, family, anything you want to throw in there with your character. So that walks you through the 9-step process of how to make a character. And then we come to the ability scores section. And this is kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit. In Starfinder, I want to keep wanting to say Pathfinder because I'm so used to playing Pathfinder. And I'm drawing parallels here and making comparisons. So in Starfinder, the way that they suggest you do character abilities is with a buy system. It's always been in D&D, and it was in Pathfinder where you could just buy your attributes. And I don't think I've never used it in those systems because I've always used the roll 4d6, pick the 3 highest. And depending on the DM, it was always Well, if you rolled really bad and you got like under a 10, you can re-roll just a couple times because you didn't want shitty characters. But in this system, the cool thing is it basically makes it so your characters are all starting at average. So when you start out, your player starts with every stat is a 10. It's plain and simple. Every stat is a 10, which is completely average in the Starfinder universe. And afterwards, you add in your racial bonuses. So let's say you're a human, okay? You would add +2 to any one of your stats, any one of your 6 stats. So you could bump one of your 10s to a 12. And then you add in your theme bonus. So let's say you're an ace pilot, you get +1 to dexterity. Your dexterity now goes up to an 11. Or a 13 if you say put the +2 in there. So then that's the first process, is applying your racial bonus and your theme bonus. After that, the game gives you 10 points to spread kind of wherever you want it to go. And it's a 1-for-1 basis, so like if you're at a 12 and you want to go with 13, it's 1 point. Simple as that. And I mean, I like the system. I initially wasn't going to... Oh, I kicked the mount. Sorry about that, guys. I initially wasn't going to use it. I was just going to have my players roll. But I've kind of changed my mind, and I think that initially we're going to use the attribute buy system just to see how it works. Now, the one thing they do kind of make very important to note is you can't bank these points for later. You either spend them all at character creation, or you lose the ones you don't want to spend. It's that simple. And why anybody would not want to spend the points they have, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's the main way that they tell you to create your character, is with the point buy system. And it's probably what I'm going to do for my game. The other options, there is a quick pick system. I don't like this system. I could see if you just wanted to make quick characters and get like a game going, it would be alright, but I don't like it. Because it ignores the bonus from your theme and it ignores the bonus from your race. It's just, there's three different ones, which are right up here. They give you a stat block, and those are the stats you get to work with. And I'm just, that's not my thing. Some people might like it, some people might not. There's one to give you kind of a focused character where one of your stats will be really high and you have a bunch of average stats. There's a split character where you're going to have a couple of higher stats and then average stats. And then there's kind of a jack of all trades where you'll have kind of a decent spread, but you're not going to be good at any one thing. I don't... Again, I could see it if you were making maybe a bunch of pre-made characters, or if you were doing a quick game, like a one-off. But no, I don't. It doesn't jive with me. I don't know. And the last one is optional rolling, which is the roll 4d6, pick the 3 highest, and go from there. So that's determining your attributes. And then, of course, the game tells you what your attributes are for, like strength is melee weapons, breaking down doors, and that kind of thing. Dexterity is shooting, avoiding attacks. Constitution is how hardy your character is. Intelligence is intelligence. Wisdom is like your street smarts and that kind of thing. And charisma is like your presence, your sense of self, and your looks. And then the one thing that they do differently here than in other games I've played is how you level up your abilities. Normally in like Pathfinder and D&D, every 4th level you can increase one ability, which is by 1 point. And I've always thought that was shitty, because it means that a lot of times you are very locked into the numbers that you got in the very beginning, and your character doesn't really dynamically grow. In Starfinder, every 5 levels, so it takes a little bit longer to get there, but every 5 levels you can pick 4 of your stats and permanently increase them. If the stat that you choose is a 17 or higher, you permanently increase it by 1 point. If it's a 16 or less, you permanently increase it by 2 points. So that way you can kind of like, if you're at 15, you can jump to 17 and change your modifier. But if you're at 17, you can only move to 18. Kind of slows you down because you don't really need characters jumping past like the 20 point. I really like that. It can show characters' growth and development as the game goes on. So I think that's pretty cool. After then, you'll get your ability modifiers depending on what your abilities are. Like a 10 is +0. I think 11 to 12 is +1. 13 to 14 is +2. And those affect die rolls, skill checks, all that kind of stuff. And then after that, you move into the health and resolve system, which hit points and things are a little different in Starfinder. You have hit points, you have stamina points, and you have resolve points. Hit points are a combination of, at first level, are a combination of how many hit points you get from your class and how many hit points you get from your race. It's that simple. And then every time you level up, you get hit points based on what you would get from your class. So if it's +7, every level you get another 7 hit points. Stamina points are your constitution modifier plus a number provided by your class. Simple enough. So, what are these for? Hit points are your hit points. Once you're down to 0 hit points, you enter the dying stage until you're stabilized or you die. Stamina points are kind of like a buffer. They're kind of, I want to say, almost like ablative hit points, where you start taking damage. It comes from your stamina first. And you can spend resolve to get stamina points back, and there's a couple other things you can do to kind of get stamina back. So if between fights you need to kind of heal up, you can sit and you can spend a resolve point and wait 10 minutes or 8 minutes, and you get 10 stamina points back. So it makes going from combat to combat a little bit easier if you want to do an extended combat. But it can also show the characters in the party getting worn down because their stamina gets lower and lower, and then they start taking actual hit point damage. Resolve points are a little bit different, which here we have. Resolve points are kind of talked about over in this section. You calculate your resolve points by determining half your character level, plus the modifier of your key ability score. So whatever your class's key ability score is, say you have a +2. Say you're level 2, you would end up with 3 resolve points. Resolve points are important because they're kind of like your last option. You can use resolve points for a lot of things. Some class features kick off based on resolve points. You can use it to regain stamina. You can use it to stabilize yourself. You can use it to get back in the fight once you're stabilized. However, if you are in the dying state, you lose a resolve point each round you remain in the dying state. The minute you hit 0 resolve points, you're dead. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to manage them a little bit. They are the resource. They're one of the resources in this game that you do have to manage, because you can use them to do good, powerful things. But if you use too much of them, and you do end up getting hurt, you're in trouble. So that's kind of the basics on how health and resolve and stamina work in the system. Alignment's great, I guess, if you do want to play a science fantasy version of the game. If you're playing the game, the settings they provide, alignment is fine. There's the chaotic, neutral, lawful, evil, neutral, good. It's the same as in all the other RPGs, and even in here it says it's kind of just a guideline for how the character should act, not how they act all the time. My game, I've personally decided to axe alignment. It always is just so bothersome to me, because unless you have somebody playing a paladin or somebody playing like a cleric that relies on their code of conduct, player characters kind of just, most people end up being neutral or chaotic neutral. Some people are lawful neutral. So you end up with that. I don't allow players to be evil in my campaigns just because it causes more problems than it's worth. So they're just it's a mechanic that I don't plan on using. I also don't really plan on using a lot of the the deities and religion stuff from this setting, so it's not something I'm going to worry about either. But it is there. It tells you how to use it. And it tells you how to change the alignments and that kind of thing. So if you want that in your game, it is there. Here's the layout. So, if you want it, it's there. Leveling up, it goes into, which, leveling up is pretty simple. It's every 5 levels you can boost 4 of your points. There's a chart that tells you when you get extra feats, extra theme bonuses. It goes a little bit into multi-classing, which multi-classing is, some people love it, some people hate it. Take it as you will. And then there's a retraining option, which, because this is science fiction, there's a tech option to, like, get rid of old things that you pick that you don't want anymore and do new things. So that's kind of cool. And I want to show the picture, because this race is quickly becoming, it's the Vesk. It's quickly becoming one of my favorite races. I just think they look really cool. All the artwork they've done in the book is really cool for them. And the last part of this is the themes. And there are like 10 themes. And each one is enough to make your character slightly different. Like I said, there's the ace pilot, there's the priest, the scholar, the bounty hunter, the icon, the spacefarer, mercenary, xenoseeker, the outlaw, and the themeless. Let's talk about these for a minute. Each one gives you a stat bonus. So like ace pilot gives you a +1 to dex, icon gives you a +1 to charisma. So they help you tailor your stats a little bit more. They also give you options. So like, let's say you are an ace pilot. At first level you get knowledge on your theme, which means you can make checks to think of like information about starships or vehicles easier, and like ace pilots easier. Piloting also becomes a class skill, and if it's already a class skill and you take it, you get a bonus to it. So that's kind of what themes do. They're all pretty self-explanatory. The ace pilot is a pilot, bounty hunter is a bounty hunter, priest, scholar, all of them are pretty self-explanatory. I think they're a really kind of neat concept they added in, because it lets you tailor your character just a little bit more to what you want it to be and do. So like, there's the picture of the ace pilot. That's the bounty hunter and the icon. I just want to show you the artwork, because again, I think Piazzo, there's your mercenary and your outlaw. I think Piazzo did a great job with the artwork in this book. Here's your priest and your scholar, and your spacefarer and your xenoseeker. They did a really great job with the artwork in the book. I'm really happy with it. And that's kind of like, that's the first 2 chapters. That's the overview and creating a character. Overall, it's all pretty standard stuff. If you've played an RPG before, you'll be pretty familiar with it. Things they made different from, say, Pathfinder, they added themes. Themes are different. They're a little bit cool. They're a little bit of customization that's cool. They changed hit points around, so now you have stamina and resolve, which I kind of like. And they changed the way you do your abilities, which they made it the buying abilities option, which again I think is pretty cool. All in all, so far I like it. I'm sure there's some people out there that probably aren't happy with it. I like it. Like I said, I think the artwork is pretty. So those 2 chapters, I give my stamp of approval on. I'm looking forward to making characters. I already have a game planned. I'm finishing out the opening adventures. We gotta hammer out a date when we can actually play, and I'm hoping that maybe we'll be able to record that in some fashion. How, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm gonna work on it. So there it is. There's the beginning of my kind of delving into the Starfinder book. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment. And the next video on this is going to be on the races, which I'm just going to do all the races in one video. It might be kind of longer, but it's just going to be all one chunky video for races. On top of that, the next video after that will be classes. Like I said, if you guys want me to break it down class by class, go ahead and do that. Let me know in the comments, and I'll do it. If not, I'm either going to do just like 2 classes at a time, or I might break them down into what I think are the fighting classes, the casting classes, the support classes, that kind of thing. But that's it. Hopefully you guys are as excited for Starfinder as I am, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll see you next time here at Bullshit Games.